Welcome to another Wednesday Night Live. Merry Christmas, everybody, to all 12,000 of you on Facebook, all 1,500 or 1,300 of you on YouTube, the 500 or so on Rumble. Merry Christmas to you all. Hope you enjoy the holiday with your families. And today we're going to get into the WEF video that I recently dropped, another part of the In Their Own Words series. And then we're also going to talk some Twitter files. Version number 8 has just recently dropped, and I'm hearing mockingbirds, if you follow me. Well, anyway, it's time to get it on. Let's play offense.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to write. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wednesday Night Live. So, Merry Christmas. We'll start off by just telling everybody Merry Christmas. Got Big Man Ruben with me here today, and we're going to be talking about the video that I just released. It was another drop in the WEF In Their Own Words series, and it's interesting because I believe that it's being restricted, and so that's going to lead us into our second portion, which will be the Twitter files. But Ruben, Merry Christmas to you too, just in case I don't see you after this broadcast.
Merry Christmas.
And the season is upon us. I feel terrible this year. I have not done the lights this year, and it just so happens that like everyone did their lights this year. So I'm like,
I just found all my outdoor lights. They were stuck away somewhere. We couldn't find them, and I literally just found them this morning. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
I made a vow to myself though that next year I'm going all out. Like I'm keeping up with the Joneses next year. Every time I drive home at night, I have to drive down this row of just incredibly lit houses, which is awesome that, that everyone's lighting their houses up and everything. The year I don't do it, everyone goes nuts. So now I feel like the oddball out. I'm like the bad house on the
Have you
block.
seen the influx of leftover Halloween decorations turned into Christmas decorations?
I have not.
We have a bunch here. A bunch of people got like the 20-foot skeletons, and they're paying to put up. So they actually sell Santa suits for them. So you see all these 20-foot skeletons dressed in Santa suits.
It was disturbing though. I went to YouTube. I ended up not taking anything from there, but I was looking for something that just had like Santa saying, Merry Christmas or something like that. I was going to try and incorporate it. And like the whole front page of YouTube was like evil Santa skeleton, this Santa. And I was just like, for the love of God, like, can we just leave Christmas alone? Can we just leave it alone? Like, does it have to be does it have to be aggression towards it? It just drives me nuts. And it's, just one of those things. It's the world we live in right now with the indoctrinated, and there's not much you can do about it. But, but speaking of the indoctrinated, so Klaus Schwab, Uncle Klaus, has done an interview. He did an interview with the English-speaking Chinese propaganda networks, and and I'm listening to it and I'm watching it, and I'm like, this WEF, I have this series, Ruben, so it's WEF In Their Own Words, and I basically I'm compiling clips of just crazy stuff that these guys just tell you outright, like it's it's okay, like it's perfectly normal, and then I put them together because one of the things that I learned about this group of sociopaths is that when you listen to only one of them, you never get the full picture, right? They'll say things that that once you know them, you realize how creepy those things are. But then, and until you put it in context with what all these other people at World Economic Forum say, and what they project, and what, because they speak in matter of fact terms. Like, have you ever watched these guys?
Hmm. No,
Like
they have no problem saying what they're doing.
yeah, and they talk about it not in a way that's like trying to sell you on it, but it's like
Oh, so
it's
we're gonna
just
do
trying
this.
to, yeah, like this is what's going to happen, folks. So like we just want you to understand
It's
when
like
it
Mariano
happens.
Rivera. They're there with the closer. I'm gonna throw this pitch. I'm
Yeah,
gonna throw it there, and you're not gonna hit it.
yeah.
And we're all standing up there with a bat in our hand, going, "Go ahead, throw it." And they throw it, and we ain't hitting it.
And it's crazy. It's crazy, the terms that he, like, the things that he says, and with him and this guy Yuval Harari, and like, so, and for those that don't know Yuval, he's like an author, slash, I don't even know what, the historian, but like he basically is this dude who paints a macabre vision of the future, and just like it's just such a dystopian vision. And he basically looks at all this technology that's coming down the pike, and the technology is real, but it doesn't have to go the way that Yuval Harari explains it. But Yuval Harari is constantly invited to these WEF forums to speak because they share this vision. And his team is saying, well, he's never even met Klaus Schwab, because people were there are many articles and such and blogs and things like that that are saying he's a top advisor to Klaus Schwab. Now, at even if you want to take them at face value and say that they've never, that he doesn't counsel Klaus Schwab and he's not, you can't deny the fact that WEF continually invites this guy to speak and say these crazy things at WEF forums. Like, you wouldn't invite somebody, right? Like if you're throwing a pro life rally, you're not going to invite a bunch of pro choice people to come speak at your rally. Right? Like clearly you're going to select people who believe the same way that you and your organization does. And that's what this guy does. And I took some clips from it. I want to so so he basically, a couple of them are pretty, they're all pretty short, but this one I kind of, in the compilation that I put out, it sort of paints the story. But like, I realized that there are some people who don't really get the narrative. They don't understand the narrative that I'm trying to get across. So I'm actually going to put out another video after explaining the video, and what, even though I felt like it was very self-explanatory, I think anybody who knows anything about WEF knows that it was pretty self-explanatory. But in the end, like, so here's a clip of let's see where we are. All right. So Klaus Schwab, we'll do clip one.
We should leave it to each country to make its own decision what system it wants to adopt. But the Chinese model is certainly a very attractive model for quite a number of countries.
Now he's in
So
this clip. He's
communism is a very
basically
attractive model.
right. He's digging, and there's another clip that I didn't use, but he in that clip is saying we basically have to mentor the population, meaning the world population. That the WEF, need to mentor the world population and make them understand that this is really ultimately going to be for their benefit. And says we have to do this by showing our good example. And then right after he says our good example, he goes, now mind you, he is on Chinese media here, right? So but it's not the only time he's ever said something like this. He's
This is real
multiple
quick.
times.
This is Chinese media in China. This isn't.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is they're
this is
English speaking
okay.
media, so they have like an English branch of their
Sure.
propaganda arm. But like Klaus is quoted saying this all the time. He's not the only one either. Trudeau has said it. All of these WF folks see China, even though China is not going to be down with their program and is going to be an adversary. They see the Chinese system as being what they would like to model off of, which should scare the crap out of everyone, because the Chinese system right now, they're putting out programmable money. They've got social scores where if you don't behave the way the government likes, they literally can like shut off your money, like turn it off. Like your money has an off switch, and they
Well,
can just
you
they
know,
can say you can't travel, you can't buy certain foods, you can't like, and this is what they look at to emulate.
you joke, but there's a bank somewhere in the Midwest that will not let you use your debit card to purchase guns.
Yeah, I mean that's a light version of it, but it's the same
No,
concept, right?
it's
Like,
starting. You know what I mean?
no, absolutely. And CBDC, which they're also very open about, central bank digital currency, like they're deathly afraid of Bitcoin, but they absolutely love CBDC. Now they're afraid of Bitcoin because Bitcoin is essentially like cash. So, like for those out there who don't understand Bitcoin and how it works, it's the same concept as gold. It operates on scarcity. So the reason it retains value is similar to, it's like a hybrid sort of, because its value really is generated off the fact that people believe it has value, which makes it more analogous to the paper dollar. However, it retains its value the way gold does because there's a finite amount of it. And nobody can start printing Bitcoin. Like no, it's organically mined through computers that all over the country, all over the world. It's through blockchain. That's what they mean by blockchain. All these computers are like connected to the same, the same system, but you never know which computers a transaction is going to use when it gets made. So it's untraceable. You can't follow a Bitcoin transaction. Whereas CBDC, you can follow every single transaction that gets made in the world, and they love that concept, and that's what China is already rolling out with the digital yuan. So they want, so basically, what he's saying there is that, yeah, we emulate China. That's what we want. That's what we want to see, right? And you think that that can't happen in the United States. Like people are like, oh, well, that'll never happen in the United States. But well, in the United States, what they're working on, so it's not a social score, it's a carbon footprint. And so basically they want to give Americans, every American, they want to give you and really every citizen of the world. But it's relevant here, in the scope of Americans, but they want to give every citizen of the world a carbon score. And if you think that that's crazy, and you think that, like, how would they even do this? Like, it's going to go by, you know what? Let me show you someone at the WEF explaining what it is.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's, where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Meanwhile, they all took a private jet to go to that meeting.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? So, and that's the irony of all this. Like I feel like even Marxists should be mad at these people. like even people that are in the mass formation should be pissed at these people. Like, you really, I mean, they've got these people so closed on the climate change deal that they'll listen to this and think it's a good thing. Like, they'll listen to this and be like, yeah, that's great technology. Like the one thing that we need to make sure never happens is that because what if people don't realize what's going to happen, 5G is going to get, once 5G is the millimeter wave, the edge computing and the full blown 5G, not the nonsense that's on phones right now, but the high end millimeter wave. Once that's unleashed, there is an entire influx of technologies that have already been developed that have not hit the ground running because they don't have the connectivity to make them work. But things like automated cars, like, that's pretty much done. Like if 5G were everywhere, if they could connect with edge computing everywhere and and have the bandwidth to allow all these cars to communicate with each other and let all, everything work together in one cloud, if they had that speed and bandwidth, we
They
would
would have
have
shut our cars
automated
off,
cars right now.
and they would have shut off our cars during COVID.
They'll be able to do all kinds of creepy
I know.
stuff. If the government is allowed to control these types of technology, there's all kinds of creepy stuff that'll be coming down the pike, and people need to realize that. And Ken Smith here is saying it's all about total control. It is. It absolutely is. And
100%.
when you listen to the words of these people and where their morals are, right? So it's like, all right, well, you guys want to rule the world. You know, what do you believe in, right? Like what are your values, right? And when you look at the values, and this is where Yuval Harari comes in, because this is the guy who speaks openly, like he cares about nothing, and frankly, you know, when it comes to it, like this guy, he doesn't believe in human rights, he doesn't believe in anything, right? Here's a breakdown from Yuval.
In truth, there are no gods in the universe, no nations, no corporations, no money, and no human rights and no justice outside the common imagination of us human beings.
There's nothing.
Imagine there's
Everything
no
is
heaven.
imagination.
It's easy if you try.
Right. And so the idea there is, well, we need to reimagine everything. Like, and that's the goal, is that we're going to reimagine democracy. We're going to reimagine everything.
Does anybody ever say why? Why?
Because
Like, really,
they
does
have
anybody just ever hear this and just go, well, why?
because they have to save us from climate
But
change.
from what?
Because we need a more inclusive,
You know, it's
social
funny.
justice and equity-ridden world.
My daughter is taught to say, I believe in climate change. I don't believe in climate crisis. You know, and it's funny
Right.
when you look at if you put, I don't know if you notice now, Facebook, if you put anything about climate or weather or damn, it's hot out here, they put a tag, and I'm not kidding. It could be like, damn, it's hot out today, and
Right.
or you know, you put something like, damn, it's really cold in July, and they'll put, well, climate change is real. Let me show you why. Let me show you your temperature change in the last 30 years. And I had this conversation with my wife because obviously she must have seen this, because I know she's not involved with she's doing research on climate change. So she goes, no, the temperature in our neighborhood has changed in the last 30 years. But now let's take two neighborhoods, right? Let's take one neighborhood that's not developed. It doesn't have any asphalt. It has trees. It's pretty much farmland. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you take an area you take Newark, right? You take downtown Newark. It's going to be hotter in downtown Newark because you got bigger buildings, you got more asphalt, you got no trees, you got no circulation. So you could look at it and go, yeah, the temperature has raised in my neighborhood in the last 50 years, but so have we've overdeveloped, we've cut down trees, we've cut down all of this. And just because the temperature is raising in a certain degree doesn't mean that we're going to melting the ice caps tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I go back to,
frankly,
why would President Obama buy a house in Martha's Vineyard if he truly believed we were going to be underwater in 12 months?
why would banks even give a loan for anywhere in Florida?
Exactly.
The entire thing's supposed to be underwater within like 30 years. So if you're going to give a 30-year mortgage to somebody in Florida, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Oh,
I
real
mean,
quick.
in the end, look, this stuff, even with the climate changing and things like that, like even if the caps completely melted, like even if they all, like, number one, it's not going to happen overnight. Number two, even if they did, we would lose some coastline around the world. That's
So-
what would happen. People would have to move more inland, and those who have properties on the coast will likely get screwed out of their real estate.
Real quick,
That's like the worst part of it that's going to happen.
I gave my daughter a little piece of ammunition. She wanted to buy her teacher expo markers because they keep dying and she has to throw them out and she needs more for her classroom, right? So never mind the fact that my daughter shouldn't have to buy school supplies like expo markers. That's neither here nor there. She wants to do it as like a Christmas present for her teacher, right? Which is fine. So I talked to her today and I said, you know, Lex, when I was in school, we didn't have expo markers. We had blackboards and chalk. And the chalk, you used it until it was gone.
Poof.
I said, but now, you know, you'd have one piece of chalk would last you a week. And you'd go outside and you'd pat the freaking erasers out the window, you know? And So I said, I want you to ask your teachers, if climate change is so important, why don't you guys stop using expo markers and go back to chalk and blackboards?
Yeah.
And I keep
Yeah,
giving my
I mean,
daughter,
we could go on
because I
debunking
know, but
climate
yeah, but
change.
I just want people out there to know that you need to arm your children with these little questions like why? Because I forgot who it was. There's a meme out there, and I think it might have been Carl Sagan. There's a meme out there where you go into a first grade classroom, and you talk to the kids, and they're like, "Why is water wet? Why is the moon round?
Oh, yeah.
What, you know what I mean?" You go into a
And then when
12th
they get
grade
into high
classroom, and they're
school,
like,
yeah,
"Where is my
they're brain
test?
dead. Like,
Scantron." You know what I mean? They
what
stop
happened
asking
from here to
questions.
there is
Right.
what he was asking.
So you arm your kids with these questions instead of just being pelted with climate change, climate change, climate change. You have to arm your kids, because if you're not talking to your kids, and I know you do, but if you don't talk to your kids about this crap, somebody else is. And
Yep.
that's.
Yeah, and that's what people look. Our generation is kind of guilty in this front, and the guys like Klaus and China and those, the movement to take down the United States is an old one. It's been going on now. China has their 100-year war. That for them would end the CCP. I shouldn't say China. I should say the CCP. The CCP has their stated and published 100-year war that started in 1949 with the establishment of the CCP, that they do think they are on schedule for, and they do feel that by 2049 they will be the dominant power in the world. And right now, if the United States doesn't do anything about it, they will be.
What do you mean do anything about
And
it? We're buying into it. We're
right,
helping
right.
them.
Well, that's what I mean. But when I say by doing something about it, I mean like we all say, oh well, don't buy made in China, but everything is made in China, right? Because we allowed that to happen, right? We allowed our manufacturing jobs to leave. We continually made the nation inhospitable to manufacturing. And as a result, manufacturing has continued to leave to the point where I think COVID really opened some eyes where we couldn't even make paper masks. I mean, we couldn't, we're not capable of manufacturing really anything. I
No,
mean,
we used to
it
we
would
used to
be a
make
full World
antibiotics
War
and
II convert convert this plant to do this, convert that place to do that if an emergency ever came
we
down.
used to make antibiotics and baseballs in Puerto Rico. Now we make baseballs who the hell knows where, and and antibiotics all come from China.
Yeah. No, it's true. And the manufacturing, I mean, even I mean, I'm at a level now where I may not be able, like it's probably not reasonable to buy everything USA. We just don't make enough stuff here to buy everything USA. But I still don't have to buy made in China. You know what I'm saying? So I'll go with Mexico, Bangladesh, Thailand, whatever. Anywhere but, right? Like is where the mentality is now. And I was watching a great documentary on Epic TV about China's 100-year war, and Epic TV, Epic Times in general, to me is the authority on all things China.
Is that
Like
the final war?
I think so.
Is that the name
I
of it?
it was 100-year. It might have been the final war. I don't know. If you go to Epic TV, you'll see it in big friggin'. It's a big deal. But Jason Thomas here says, "Stay old school. The hell with technology." Yeah, Jason. You know what? I would say I don't mind Taiwan as much though, Jason. I will say that because Taiwan, at least for now, is still a free country. Like they're still a free. I don't know how long that's going to last, but it didn't work out too well for Hong Kong. But the mainland China that's why they're separate. That's why you'll see made in Taiwan and made in China. But you'll see made everywhere except the United States. Like you'll see made in Vietnam, you'll see made in Bangladesh, you'll see made in all that stuff is out there. But just stay away from mainland China.
Do you know what's crazy? You ever watch Shark Tank?
I've watched
You've seen it,
but
right?
I don't.
You've seen it though, right? Well, I like it. The kids like it, but it's crazy because you'll have these companies that they come out and they're like, it cost us $4 to make this widget. Amazon, stop. Sorry about that. By the way, Jeff Bezos is listening to this whole conversation.
I was just gonna say he's listening. He's watching. We got Bezos watching.
We got Bezos on the line. What up, Bezos? He's a B-boy hanging in my Bezos stands.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Anyway, so the guy will come along and he goes, "I got this great widget. This is the widget I want to sell. I made $800,000 last year selling these widgets, and I'm selling them for $20 each, and they cost me $3 to make. Will you invest in me? And we're making them right here in the United States, and we're employing people." And the investors are like, "Oh, no, 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 no. You got to get your costs down. You got to move your things overseas." It's like they say it right on TV.
Yeah,
The guy is
yeah.
like, the purpose of this is to make jobs for people I know. And you're telling me that you'll invest in me if I move my operations overseas. You know what
Yeah,
I
and
mean? It's
frankly,
just
they're
like,
just being realists, though. Like
I
in the
know.
end, like here we got Robert saying, we are capable of manufacturing. We have a government that's doing all it could to prevent it, but at the same time, so are the people. So like when we go crazy about minimum wage needs to be this amount, minimum wage needs to be that amount. If that's not competitive in the world, then it don't matter how good it makes us feel. The manufacturing's leaving. Like and this is stuff that people vote for, right? These are things that people vote for. It's not
People don't vote for anything,
necessarily
bro.
if a politician were to turn around and say, I want to eliminate the minimum wage, which I personally want to do, but like on a political level, if somebody comes out and says that, they're done. They're done because nobody understands economics enough to understand what that means. Like what damage that does to the nation. Like the
You know what's
bottom
funny?
line.
I was just having this conversation because New Jersey will be at like $15 in like a year or two. I think on January 1st, I think we go up to $14. We've been
Kind of would
incrementing
like
it.
to see it at 20.
Right, but
That's
here's the
what I
point.
can
Let me
tell
let
you.
me put it this way. That like in 2019 it went up to $12 because I remember I was running a restaurant there and I had to tell all my hostesses they were getting raises. So it went up to $12. That $12 an hour they were making in 2019, and now they're making $15 an hour. I got news for you. They were better off making the $12 an hour because that $12 an hour went a lot further than the $15 an hour is going today. Does that make sense?
It
Am
does,
I?
but I mean, in the end, the bottom line about the whole minimum wage argument is that if an employer wants to offer X amount, I don't care if it's $1. No one would ever do that, but I'm going to use it because it's a ridiculous amount of money. All right, and
No,
if
I mean
someone's
I
out
agree with
there
you.
hiring someone for $1, and there's someone out there who makes, and those two make an agreement, and they're like, you know what, I'll do it for $1. Like if that agreement gets made and two free Americans agree on a deal, where does the government fit into this picture at all? Ever? Like they
No, I,
don't.
I, I don't want to go down this tangent of
No,
this
I
just
know, but
because we both
I
agree
brought it
on it.
up because the reason why it's there, the reason why it exists, this is all up. Like, look, this is all tied in. There's a reason why people get fired. Why politicians got people fired up about the minimum wage because it's not an accident that we can't make masks in an emergency. It's not an accident. Like Jason here says, we should be making our own stuff. We could be, Jason, but in the end, we can't do it if we're trying to if we're trying to make every cashier job at McDonald's support a family of four and free, or every factory job where your whole job is to take this widget and put this button on this widget and send it down the line for non-skilled labor like that really, those jobs are not designed to support families of four or five. Like it's incumbent on every free American to earn a skill, to learn a skill that has value to someone else. That's how the whole free market works. If you don't have a skill that, like, you might have a skill where you could twist your tongue in 9 ways, but if nobody willing to pay for that skill, you need another skill.
There might
and
be
and
there might be a tonguetwister.com site where people are paying somebody to watch that nowadays.
yeah, well, you know what? You're probably right, but in the end, like that's kind of the whole
I
point,
mean, if
though.
I could sell pictures of my feet, I'd be one picture taking motherfucker. I can tell you that
Yeah,
much.
but,
I don't know if
the
there's a
people
Yeti category on those feet finders, but if there is, I'm in, bro.
oh my goodness. But like these cats in like I can't get that in. But, like these cats that in WEF, in China, etc. Like they're cheering on the minimum wage more than the people are. They're cheering that minimum. They want it to be as high as humanly possible because it just makes it more and more and more impossible. And they're the ones who pay for the propaganda to support it. They're the
Well,
ones who pay for the advertising to get it on the agenda. They're the ones who make all of that happen. It's not
but
your
it,
local politician.
you
It's
know what,
them.
George? It circles back to every argument that I have with somebody who is, and I don't want to label people, but let's label them. Every of these people that are just establishment leftist, I believe in this, whatever, whatever. Oh, first I'm Santa, now this. Anybody that you can't argue with them. It doesn't matter what the topic is. Let's pick one: minimum wage, abortion, um, whatever it is. This is my argument to everybody when I have these conversations, and they stop in their tracks because they can't answer you. You just say to you, "All right, well, I agree with you on some level, but where's the line?" And they go, "What?" And let's take
There is
abortion.
no line. They never
Where's the
thought about
line?
it.
I go, "Where's the line?" And what do you mean, where's the line? I go, so okay, so abortion. Let's say I'm pro-choice. Okay, I agree with you. For the sake of argument, right now, I'm going to say I'm pro-choice. Where's the line? Well, the line is wherever. Okay, so the line is one day before birth. The line is changing your mind while you're on the table. The line is you had a kid. I'm
Yeah,
sure when
it's
you were
like what is
driving to
fair share? What's a living wage? Like there's
where's the
no
line?
yeah.
In Canada right now, they are literally having commercials telling you that assisted suicide is good.
Look, it
So where is and that's how you can always have these conversations with anybody is where's the line? Where's
there
the
is
line?
no
Where's
line
your
though.
line?
So right, so we understand now that that this is the game, right? That there is no line. There's intentionally no line. Like the idea is just to get people fired up, right? That's it. When it comes to issues like abortion, right? It's depopulation. When it comes to issues like living wage and minimum wage, it's to remove manufacturing. Like there's always a side. There's always been, for this entire run, right? 70 years now it's been going on. There's always been, and obviously it ramped up when the first demoralized generation, which was the hippies, like once they got indoctrinated, then they went into the schools, then they started taking university positions, then they started getting into politics, then they started taking over Hollywood,
Hey,
and then it was over.
real quick, make a note of this. Have you seen the Berkeley list of words you can't use?
No, and
Make a note
nor
of this,
will I
and we'll
ever.
talk about it next week.
Yeah, maybe,
They
maybe
have
we'll
a whole
throw that
list
on
of
the
words you
list.
can't use, including
But I
blind
want to
study.
I want to talk a little bit about the technology side of this before we go on to the Twitter files. So like with the technology piece, so if those aren't aware, if you've heard the term the fourth industrial revolution, this is not a term that organically came up. This term was created by Klaus Schwab, and he wrote a book called the fourth industrial revolution. So it's not, in case you were saying no, he didn't. Yeah, he did. There's a book, you can read it if you want. And in the end, a lot of what Yuval Harari talks about is regarding that. And what they mean by the fourth industrial revolution, right? So the steam engine, I believe, was the first, right? That was the first revolution. Then there was manufacturing and mass producing, and then there was the computer age, and those are the first three. And now the fourth industrial revolution is just going to turn the world completely upside down and on its head. And to some degree, he's right. So it's actually not a bad name for what's about to happen from a technology standpoint, because it is game changing. This is game changing. The kind of tech that you're going to start to see get unleashed, and it's going to hit fast. It's not going to be like, oh well, 2 years ago this came out, 2 years later this came out. It's going to be like in 1 year there are going to be like four revolutionary technologies that completely change the way that we live, from 3D printing to virtual reality to holograms to augmented reality. There's automated cars, all of it. It's all going to hit like at the same time, and there's no way regulations or anything like that are going to keep up with what's going on. Like facial recognition will be taken to a whole new level. They're going to be trying to implement digital currency. Like the world has an opportunity to become an incredibly creepy place. Now, on the other side of the coin, there are technologies that will be coming out that will make the world an amazing place to live. So, for example, right, I smoke. So, let's say 10, 20 years from now, my lungs are so bad that, I'm going to die from it. 10, 20 years from now, they may be able to print me a new set of lungs.
20
And,
years
and
from now,
just
you'll be in a pod eating crickets.
yeah, and then, well, I'll get to go back to my pod eating crickets, right? That's what the new printed lungs will let me do. But when you listen to Yuval Harari, and there's one particular quote that he has, I'm trying to find it here. 1, 2, 3, believe it's right here, where he talks about how this technology it will be used with respect to the relationship between government and people.
The crisis is an opportunity.
Wait, that's not it. That's not it. It's hold on.
If you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible.
So
Talk about saying the quiet part out loud, right?
yeah, but this is why I became. I mean, obviously, Article 5 is my passion, right, and the calling of a convention of states. But you cannot ignore these WEF sociopaths. You can't ignore them. They're telling you, the world that they see, and it's not like they are just some bunch of dudes. These are up to 90 world leaders. United Nations is involved. Almost every corporation on earth has been brought to its knees through the environment, social, and governance scores. It's like you're talking on a level now of people who can actually pull this stuff off. And when you watch them, right? So I mean, he's envisioning this world where, like, yeah, he's like, we're gonna be, and he's not lying, because the tech is gonna be there. They're able to manipulate people now with tech. Can you imagine when it gets to a place where people are their brains are chipped, and you've got the whole library, you've got the internet in your brain. You can basically just think and look stuff up instead of having to go to a phone or a tablet.
Right, then they control what you think.
Well, right, point in hand. But then you say, okay, well, I'm not getting that chip, right? All right, well, if you don't get that chip, you're going to be at a significant disadvantage to everybody else in the world. So, and it's going to create real issues of humanity where you're going to have to make decisions, right? Like, I'm not going to get that job. Bill, if someone already has it downloaded, it's like Matrix stuff, right? Like, I want to know Kung Fu. Boop. Like all of a sudden, you're ready to go. If just think of that, though. You got two people about to get in a fight. One of them can upload Kung Fu. The other one is just scrapping on the streets of New York. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's the kind of stuff. How long before more and more people say, I have no choice?
Can they teach Puerto Rican judo? You don't know if I got a knife. You don't know if I got a gun.
Oh, man. Robin says, no one can compete with countries who have child slave labor. The only solution is to not do business, but we do business with them because politicians get rich from it. This is why term limits make a huge difference.
10%
yes and no.
For the big guy.
Yeah, I agree, and I also disagree, though, because you don't have to have slave labor in order to manufacture.
Oh, it helps. It helps.
Well, right, but right now, like in China, they have a problem with wages. Like their people are working, their people are demanding higher wages, and they're getting them. And so now what's slave labor, right? So $3, $3 American, an hour in Tibet will get you a lot further than $3 an hour will, and you'll get a higher standard of living in Tibet than you will in in the United States. So what are we setting the parameter at? Because in the end, we don't need to be at $3 to bring manufacturing back, right? If no one would work for $3, like this is the thing, like the free market handles this business. You know, if you have no skills, all right, if you're completely skillless and someone wants to take you on to work and they pay you $5 an hour, let's say, but you have no skill, right? So there's value in the skill that you are learning. Like when I had my restaurant, all right, and for those that don't know, I owned a small restaurant for a little while. I went in to save it for a family member and whatnot, and like when I was not able, I'm competing against other casual dining and fast food places. So like In-N-Out here in California, they pay their people phenomenally. Chick-fil-A, they pay their people phenomenally. So like when I can't afford to pay what they pay, right? So what does that mean? That means I have to take people who have no skills and I have to develop them. And you know what happens after I develop them?
They go to
They
Chick-fil-A.
leave and they go to Chick-fil-A. And then I have to develop another one. But you know what? That's good. That's how the system works, right? Because that person is moving forward, right? It sucks for me because I have to keep training. But after doing this long enough, if I can build up the revenue to be able to pay what a Chick-fil-A pays or an In-N-Out pays, now I can only take the experienced employee and save myself a lot of money in development. So like, and then I'm going to be hoping that someone else out there, I'll go to someone else's little restaurant who's just starting up and snag their employees. Oh, that server was phenomenal. What are they doing working here? Come work for me. I'll give you more, right? That's how you move up in the world. That's how you move up. Like we can handle our own business. We can handle our own business. So it's just something that drives me nuts about that equation. But like when I listen to Yuval Harari and I listen to how he speaks about things like that, it just pisses me off because there's a part of me that believes that if people don't start getting this message, that he's right.
But can I stop you real quick right there with what you just said? If people don't start getting this message, right? And we talked about this the last time I was on, and I think I brought it up about like why don't people believe in conspiracy theories, and I'm dealing with it in my own town where we talked offline about how New Jersey has sank from 14th to 16th in overall our ranking. New Jersey was always one of the best states in the country for schooling, and we've dropped from 4th to 16th in as little as 3 years. And you bring this up to people, and they just don't want to believe it. They just don't want to believe it. And it like brings us into the Twitter files. The Twitter files is showing that everything we've been saying for the last 2 years is true. Like everything is true. But you tell people this and they just don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe that the school system doesn't have your children's best interests at heart. That teachers unions, and again, this isn't about teachers, it's about the teachers unions don't have your kids' best interests at heart.
It's
The
about some
government
teachers.
doesn't have your best interests at heart. I said this last week. We don't have any more of the politicians that are out there putting themselves on the line because they believe in something. We have people that we say, hey, this guy, not this guy. This guy is a
Not this
good-looking politician. He'll say what we want to say. It's the Aaron Boone, right? The reason Aaron Boone was hired as the Yankee manager was because he did well on TV.
Right. He
He
doesn't know how to
goes in
manage.
front of the
He's just
camera. He's not a
he's the
manager. He goes
AOC.
in front of the TV and he can explain what we're trying to do well. You know what I mean? He's not
Well, yeah,
there.
no, AOC can't do
He's
that.
not the Billy Martin grabbing Reggie Jackson out of the
Right.
field. He's the guy that's going to say, no, 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 no. I know Giancarlo Stanton is 0 for his last 17, but we've seen really good swings from him, and we believe he has a good thing. And it's the same thing in politics. We just have actors now.
But we
We
have
don't
to
have
get to
people
a
fighting
point.
for us.
We have to get to a point where people start to realize that what the priorities really are, right? And it's like because and I was talking a little bit about this offline last week. We had the state director from New York from Cause on, and I was talking to her offline a little bit about it. It was like We have to get to a place where we start to focus on the things that are vital, right? And everyone can define for themselves what they think is vital and this and that, but there are certain issues, right? Like abortion would be very vital to you if you're a devout, Christian and whatnot. Like I get all that, but there are certain issues that are vital to everybody, right? Like there are certain issues like spending, right? Like this inflation situation,
This
the
$1.7
idea that
trillion
modern
bill
monetary theory
that's
works,
sitting in the
like
desk.
putting an end to that is like allowing the government to continually allow the Fed to decide when it's going to print more money or raise rates to lower rate, like all of those things, right? Government overreach in the sense of like this is how I got into cost, because the I'll just take those three topics: term limits for all government officials, even the deep state dudes. Then you've got the fiscal restraints, right? If we can overturn the 16th Amendment, that would be ridiculous. That would do so much for the betterment and strength of our currency. I can't even begin to tell you, not to mention the damage it would do to the unholy relationship between corporations and politicians, because
And the
politicians,
redistribution of wealth.
they would, yeah, well, right, and that's the point, right? They won't. Politicians will, like, think about it, right? Just on that note alone, just on the note of the unholy relationship between corporations and politicians, like there's an issue that even Marxists are on board with. Like every American cannot stand the relationship between corporations and government. Every American. So imagine we were in a situation where politicians could no longer return the favor. The IRS would be shut down immediately. If we were on a consumption tax, there would be no IRS. They'd be gone. Money would be collected at the register. It would whatever the rate that's agreed upon is, that's what would get collected. Every single American would be paying taxes.
Didn't somebody
Even
run
people
on a
begging
flat
for
tax
money
a few
will pay
years ago?
taxes when they purchase something.
Didn't somebody run on a flat tax a few years ago?
There's a lot of people that ran on the concept, but like the point is, you can't do anything until you overturn the 16th. And that's just one example, right? But it's an issue that everybody should agree on. Like it's an issue that affects everyone, and everyone should agree on. There's no reason the government should be. If you ask any American on the street, or do you think it's ridiculous that the government just continues to print money and inject money artificially into the system? There is no one that's going to say yes. There are no average Americans that are going to say yes. No economist worth his shirt thinks that quantitative easing is good for the economy, right? So like these are the issues, right? That we like who's for mask mandates? Like who's for it? Who's pro mask mandate? Like you're talking about a handful of people, all of whom happen to be in power in select cities and states, right? So it's not like all Democratic voters are okay with mandating masks for everyone. They're not. All right. When it comes to vaccine mandates, most people are not avid about. Forget the Twitter bots that are littering the internet with "get your shots." The reality of the matter is, most people are not okay with with the government having that kind of control.
Most people just don't want to give a damn about anything. So it's like to your point, it's like I don't care. Like most people are just like, I don't care. If he doesn't want to get the shot, who gives a fuck? Don't get the
Right,
shot.
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I don't care.
But the problem is the control, right? They don't have the authority to do these things. Like these are the issues that need to get corrected, because it's kind of like Rudy Giuliani in New York City, where we both lived through the metamorphosis that took place in New York City, right? And we grew up in it in the 80s.
I grew up running past welfare hotels on 32nd Street.
Right. Yeah. Peep shows and all this stuff. Right. Like we grew up where Times Square was all about hookers and peep shows. Like we grew up in that. And then we watched it turn into what Giuliani transformed it into. And he did that by taking out low-level crime. He started out with low-level crime. And what he realized and what he understood was that that ripple effect was going to clean up the city, and it did.
You know what's crazy? real quick just to touch on what you just said, because I know you've been out of the city a really long time, and like I won't go to the city now. And it's someone who grew up like you know where I grew up. My dad had a restaurant on 33rd Street. He used to give me money to. I used to roll jars of pennies to have money, and I would run around by myself, 10 to 13 years old, and I would run around down there. But when 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 the city was bad, like you're saying it was, like 42nd Street was bad, 8th Avenue was bad, this and that was bad.
Bro, the
It was
trains, right?
controlled by people who it was bad, but let me tell you something. It was better than it is now because they kept the crap to certain areas and they didn't touch the money. So Broadway was always clean. Now you go to the city and it's just lawlessness.
Yeah, I
And I'm
can't even
someone
envision. I mean, it breaks my
you
heart
have no idea
to,
because
to
George, I'm
see.
someone that indulges, in numerous different things. You know what I mean? And as a professional, my professional job is I work in an industry where I sell nicotine delivery systems. Okay,
Oh God!
it's what I do.
But New York
Okay,
City breaks my heart, dude.
but
It
like
does.
like we were kids, we would go to the city. We might take a toke in the city, but even we respected the fact to get off the fucking avenue. You know what I mean? Broadway was our bread and butter. We wanted people coming to New York City. So the bums, there were always bums in New York City. There will always be bums in New York City. They were always south of 10th Ave, 8th Avenue. You know what I mean? Now you go to Broadway, you go to 5th Avenue, you're standing outside of Cartier looking at the beautiful things, and there's an encampment out front. You know
Right,
what
but
I'm
this is
saying?
again. It goes back to all being designed. Like this is all
But that's what
designed.
I mean. Like even when it was the worst of the worst, it's better than it is now.
Right. Well,
And it's
but
uncanny.
yeah. I mean, in the end, because now they're making their move, right? So now is where, like, after 2020, you could say what you want about whether it was a pandemic or whatever, but if it wasn't if it wasn't a bioweapon, which it may not have been, it may have just been a lab leak and whatever else. I mean, the only thing we know for a fact is that it was a lab leak. And in the end, it's like, okay, so even if it was just being opportunistic, like it became a bioweapon after the fact. Like it became something that was used against the population, be it by China and then by the WEF. Like this dichotomy between the two of those organizations still has me baffled a bit. Like I know that China has their 100-year war. They've never changed. I know that they've been behind the scenes trying to undermine the United States in every single way they can, actively, right, through society and whatnot. And so has the WEF. And the question for me is just which one is which one is in on this, like which one wins this battle, right? Is it going to be WEF or is it going to be, because neither option is okay with me. So like in the end there's only one way to stop all that, and it's friggin' Article 5. But I want to get into the Twitter files a little bit because these Twitter files, all right, so here he is. All right, so this is part 8 that just dropped. Okay. Now, why I haven't covered all 8 parts, but every now and then one drops that is interesting to me. And the timing was actually good too, because the latest video that I just dropped on the WEF series, in their own words, seems to have gotten slowed down, if you will. It by no means is behaving normally to any other video in that series, and except for a few which were also slowed down, and then I re-released them later and they took off again. So like why my stuff has these periods? Well, I mean, I guess I know why, right? But that brings us into Twitter. So and what Elon Musk is doing here is pretty crazy, because it's unprecedented, and now you understand why they're going after Tesla. They're going after SpaceX. The government is not going to just take this
It is, but let's
easily.
be honest, we don't 100% trust Elon Musk also.
Yes, and it
Like,
depends on what, right?
I
So
mean,
like I
he's
don't
trying to put.
100%
He's
trust
the
anybody.
first one that wants to put chips into his employees' heads. Like he's
Right,
said
but
it out
Musk
loud.
is that yeah, but see you gotta when you like the way I look at Elon Musk, all right, like when I hear Klaus Schwab talk about that stuff, now it may very well be that Elon Musk Neuralink ends up being the vehicle for that in the end. I don't know. All right, but what I'm saying when I hear Klaus Schwab talk about, we're all gonna have chips in our heads, I get freaked out. Okay. When I hear Elon Musk talk about it, even though it may very well be his tech that ends up getting hijacked and used for that sort of thing, Elon Musk is looking at it from the standpoint of curing paralysis. Like he's looking at it from a standpoint of like this dude is so out there as a visionary that I could be wrong,
Well,
right?
I
I could be
agree, but
wrong.
I feel like if he was so far out there as a visionary, he would have been killed by now.
I don't know. They didn't kill Howard Hughes, right? So I mean, in the end,
Because
every
freaking
once in
guy
a while,
didn't
you
leave
get
his
these.
penthouse.
What's that?
He didn't leave his penthouse.
Yeah, but that's because he went crazy. That wasn't. But anyway, this latest drop. So what they've shown in these files, for the most part, to kind of sum it up for people, is the unholy there should be prosecutions going on just from the emails that have been released so far. All right, because it's clear. Like it's not ambiguous. It's not someone's interpretation of it. It is 100% clear that the government has been colluding to silence speech. All right. And that's as illegal as it gets. Like so forever it's been like, well, you can't tell a private company what to do. Well, no, you can't, and neither can the government. So when it becomes proven, all right, and I felt that Dr. Shiva had this nailed in his lawsuit back when we did that in an early episode, but in the end, this is you've got the owner of the company. No one gets better access than this, right? He owns it all. He owns all the emails. He owns everything, and in the end, they're just coming out with it. And they're just dumping it, and nothing's going to happen. All right. And this is what bothers me, right? So part 8 now, what they came out with, this wasn't so much about the government, silencing, and although there is evidence of that in here as well, what comes from this that should get some heads hung is the Mockingbird, right? The Operation Mockingbird. Are you familiar with that?
I mean, yes, but that's been going on for years. Like if
Right. Right.
if you
But
if you ever
now
watch local news, they all have the same news, and you know,
Right, and for those that don't know what Operation Mockingbird was, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's already the documents have been released on it. It was many years ago where the CIA, right, deep state folks were pressuring, working with, etc., media personalities and journalists to put out false narratives as psyops. Okay, they call them psyops, and they're basically just and it's not just for the American people. It's as a matter of fact, when Mockingbird broke, it was kind of more. They more made it sound as if it were all for foreign relations and things like trying to manipulate the narrative. Let's say in Yemen or in Iran, but in reality, it's here too. And this has always been my criticism of journalists, including Fox News. All right, and what that criticism is that these people who have been around the industry forever, like you take like a Brett Baer or a Britt Hume or one of those guys, Anderson Cooper or whatever, from whatever aisle, and they've built up this network of contacts, sources, if you will. And they're colonels, generals, former politicians, sometimes former presidents, depending on the scope of how big the journalist is. And they've come to, over time, believe these people wholeheartedly without, and they don't give them up as a source and whatever. But these people, whether they are intentionally manipulating the process or the government or their friends and networks in the government are manipulating the process, that's where they give that information to the source believes it, and then gives it to their journalist. But they gave it to that source because they know he's going to go to that journalist. It's not like they don't, they think they're all, slick about it, but it's like they know damn well that you work with this journalist. And if we tell you this, you're going to go regurgitate it to them. And then the journalist gets it, and everybody involved believes it. And they go and they report it to the American people. And they've been shoveling this kind of BS down our throat forever. And these files demonstrate it. And that's why I thought this one mattered. And so here, what they're saying here, okay, so Li Fang is the one that's dropping all these, and he's under I forget the other guy's name. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Taibbi?
So here he's saying Twitter has claimed for years that they make concerted efforts to detect and thwart government-backed platform manipulation. Here's Twitter testifying to Congress about its pledge to rapidly identify and shut down all state-backed covert operations and deceptive propaganda. And then they go on to put on the doc where they basically break down their policy for stopping state-backed operations. Now, of course, you could just you understand that there's a wink and a nod with that, right? It's almost like, yeah, we're going to stop state-backed operations, present company excluded, of course. Right? We won't let those Iranians do
Except for
anything.
you guys.
You guys are all right. You're in the good book. He says, but behind the scenes, Twitter gave approval and special protection to the U.S. military's online psychological influence ops, despite knowledge that Pentagon propaganda accounts used covert identities. So what he's saying is the government had all these fake accounts set up, and they were using fake photos to make it look like it was authentic. And it even goes on to say that they had requested. So here's the email.
Wait, do you mean that Instagram model didn't really like my tweets?
No, I'm sure she did. This is other people. So this Nathaniel Kaler, all right. So he's from Central Command, right? First he starts off, thanks. Sure, it's tough to do web ops when you can't tweet. So he says, so right away he's saying, yeah, we do web operations through Twitter. Absolutely. So I've attached a list. The first 6 on the list are our priority accounts. Ideally, if we could have them verified, blue check mark and white listed, if there is such a thing. One of them at Yemen Current is currently not indexing. So he's basically telling them, so this is how they're playing with the proxy war in Yemen with Saudi Arabia. They've got these accounts at this one at Yemen Current, and they'll attach a personality to that, a photo to that, all that. And then they start posting as if it's an organic guy in Yemen who's saying whatever they want him to say. And while that's Yemen, and it's not shocking that we do this in other countries. Number one, we should never be shocked that other countries do this to us as well. And number two, we don't just do this to other countries. So they do get into detail about here's some of the examples of the so they put these photos. Here's an example, right? So this is like a post from one of their fake accounts, one of the CIA's or Central Command's fake accounts, right? Obviously, I don't read Arabic, but they put a personality to it, right? There's a guy here. It's just like, hey, look at me. Here's what I have to say, that sort of thing. And it's like when you read into this and you scroll through it, and for those that want to look for it, it's Li Fang. You should find it under Li Fang.
Just a hashtag Twitter files, and all 8 will come up.
Okay, there you go. I'm not a good Twitter user, so but here's the point, right? If they're doing all these things with Twitter, and now we know, there's no more. No, they're not really doing. We know that they're using Twitter for psyops and whatever. So clearly, they are doing this with Facebook and with Google and with everybody else, right? And if you think that they don't, if you think Google isn't complicit in these things, so
no,
there's actually
Twitter,
just to cover the topic we just left, right? So, and in that WEF video, I put in Yuval Harari saying, when there are crises like this, you have to follow the science. And then you hear the undersecretary of the United Nations in an interview explaining her reaction when they had to reach out to Google because they were Googling climate change and getting critical articles of climate change. And so they had to go in and fix it so that they could show this.
We're becoming much more proactive. We own the science, and we think that the world, should.
And she says that casually, right? She says it casually. We own the science. We own it. This is not something, and we think the world should know. We own the science, and we think the world should know. And so, like when you listen to these people, whether it's the CIA doing it with Twitter, or it's the UN doing it with Google, or as Dr. Shiva's case was Twitter again, or Jen Psaki making it clear that they're flagging posts for Facebook, right? So when they're coming out, whether there's slips or not, it's obvious that there should be heads rolling, and heads are not rolling. And this is why I don't believe that elections can save us from tyranny. I just don't. This is why I believe in Article 5 the way I do, because there's no one that can. Most of these people in office now, at some point in their life, are actually good human beings.
You know what? I believe that 100%, and I've seen it. I've seen it myself. I've seen people get corrupted by power.
Well, Mark Meckler talks about it. He was the co-founder of the Tea Party, and he says it in his talks. He's like, when we got everybody elected, we were fired up. He's like, we were ready to go. He's like, we had our own guys in there. Like our strategy to primary these people was successful. And he's like, and then a few months went by, and they were all sucked in by the machine. Every one of them. Every one of them. And that's what got him to shift to the Article 5 movement. And I could totally understand why he would do that. If I was in that situation, I would do the exact same thing. And like to me, like once you learn, right? Like once you learn about Article 5 in depth, right? And for those, I have and thank you for those who are still with us. Much appreciated. I'm going a little bit over here, but we're almost done.
I'm still getting the con argument because I bring it up on
everybody. You're gonna get it.
Still getting the con argument.
You're gonna get it,
and it's crazy when I turn around and say, do you realize you only need 18 states to shut anything down?
13.
Sorry, 13 to shut anything down, and they're like, well, you just want to rewrite the whole Constitution, and I'm like, that's not how that works.
No, it's not.
I'm like, you're not rewriting you're not bringing a convention of states to People think you bring a convention of states and you're locking up a bunch of people in a Philadelphia warehouse like they did in 1788. You know what I'm saying? And rewriting the whole Constitution and electing George Washington president and fighting with the windows closed.
There's some form of it, though, where you actually are. I mean, it goes by what the commission is. Like the bottom line is it goes by the commission. And so the commissions that are being sent out now, every single state's, all 19 that have passed, the 5 or 6 that were optimistic we'll get through this coming year, all of those that have passed have the same commission. Term limits, they're all restrictive of federal power. So there's nothing that can be discussed that expands federal power in any way that would fall under the commission. All right. And what JBS tries to convince people is that, well, the founders weren't commissioned to write the Constitution that they wrote, and they were commissioned to write that Constitution. And if you don't know much about the Constitution, and one of these guys, especially if you're like a part of their organization and they're pretty conservative minded, so you're thinking, all right, these guys know more than I do, and you want to believe them. So you do believe them because there's no counterpoint at the time, and you roll with it. But in the end, they're lying, and they're knowingly lying. It's not even like, well, it's just their interpretation. Like what they are saying is fundamentally and factually false. And that's why, Ruben, you'll see. I told you this in the beginning. When they start arguing this stuff to you, they're just going to, it's the same thing as like when you're arguing with a Marxist. It's the same thing. They just keep repeating the programming. and they can't get off of it. And when you ask them a question that doesn't jive with the programming, they go back to repeat the programming because there's no answer. They've never asked that question.
It's a first grader, right? Why? Just ask them why.
Right. It's exactly what
Why?
it is. And
Why?
it's like when you pose them with the idea, like the first thing with those people you got to do is just debunk the fact that the first convention was a runaway, because it wasn't. And I'll give you a good read, Rube. It's only like a page or two. It's Federalist Paper 40, right? You'll read that and
Hold
you'll
on.
hear from Madison from his own hand make the case why they were absolutely authorized to do what they did. And to put it in layman's terms, what he says is that you
Just
sent us
so
a
you know,
commission.
on my books, my iPhone books, I have right there. I don't know if you can see, the first one I have is the Federalist Papers. I read it all the time
Yeah, go to
when I
40.
just have nothing to do. All
Go
right,
to
I'm on.
number 40 because
I'm
JBS
actually on.
uses it
I
all
was
the
reading
time.
30 for some reason because it's about taxation.
If you 40 is where Madison makes the case as to why it wasn't a runaway convention and why they were commissioned to do what they did. And what he says basically is that you commissioned us to revise the Articles of Confederation for the purpose of creating a firm national government. And the argument that he makes is that the Articles of Confederation were written to not have a firm national government. So the idea that we would keep the Articles of Confederation in place or try to tweak them, the amount of tweaking that would need to get done would completely change the document anyway. So if it makes you feel better, we will leave the name Articles of Confederation, but it won't look anything like the Articles of Confederation. So, and so that was his point. And he goes through the whole essay saying that. And there's a quote on the bottom of it. On the bottom of Federalist Paper 40 is a quote that JBS uses, always out of context. They use it and try to make the case that it's not legitimate. The founders of this country knew damn well that we would be in the place that we're at right now. They knew damn well that do they know about the WEF and Soros and China and no, they didn't. But what they did know was that we were going to get to a place where things were just out of control. The federal government has grown out of control and it no longer cares about its constituents. It's functionally broken. And as long as it's functionally broken, structurally broken, there's no way that you can elect your way out of it because these politicians get elected into it. It's structurally broken and they get eaten up by it. I mean, Rand Paul is a freaking unicorn. I mean, the bottom line is there's almost every single person, no matter how good-hearted they are, when they go into that system, they get eaten alive. And the only people that are going to save this nation, it's not going to be them. It's not going to be Trump. It's not going to be DeSantis. It's not going to be these guys can help in many ways, but they're not saving us. And the founders knew that. They knew that when it got to this place that would happen. And so they put this ability to directly amend the Constitution so that it can be clearly stated. If the courts define the Commerce Clause the way they have, and just give the government all this ridiculous control over our economy. If they're going to do that, then you know what? There's only one way to overturn that. There's only one way to overturn a Supreme Court decision, and that's through amendment. That's it. So the question is, who provides the amendment? And the founders say it should be us. And that's exactly who it should be. And then James said the 16th Amendment was never legally ratified. I have to look that up. I've never heard that before. I don't know if this is along the lines of those people who are saying don't pay your taxes because they're I know there were some people saying that, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going down that road. But I
Just
will
pay
look
your
into
property
that.
taxes. Don't fuck around with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I never heard. I don't know. I have to look into that. I haven't. He's saying there's a court case that proved it. There was some commotion about this, actually. I remember not long ago about people saying that the 16th Amendment was never ratified, didn't get the votes, but it was still added illegally. So I got to look that up. I mean, if it didn't get the votes, then that's significant. But like whatever. Just repeal it outright, and we don't have to worry about it, right? Like, just repeal it, and we're done, and we move on. But if there are any questions regarding convention of states, as always, bring them up at any point during the show. I will always highlight. Those questions at a moment's notice. And then
You like my
Jason
Baby Yoda shirt?
What is that?
You like my Baby Yoda shirt?
Oh, very nice, Ruben. And which also, now that we are late enough in the broadcast, probably if I were a much better marketer, would have done this much earlier. But our t-shirt store is open. So the shirts that you see me wearing on the show, you can purchase in our Etsy store. You can get there. The link will be on our front page of our website, www.thepatriotthinktank.com. And, all different varieties. I just added one actually that is not in the video, but it says Yuri was right. And it's got a picture of Yuri up top with, like, underneath. It says Yuri was right for Yuri Bezmenov.
And they could be delivered in time for Little Christmas, so you get that second present.
You'll make it in time for that.
For all the Puerto Rican
holidays.
fans out there that took offense to my Puerto Rican judo joke. The funny thing is, no Puerto Ricans would have taken offense to that joke.
No, you didn't.
All right, George.
Yep. All right. Looks like it's time to go. Ruben, thanks for jumping on with me. Everyone, thank you for
let
your
you close
support.
it down.
Yep. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Real quick, just a real sidebar. The Giants are going to make the playoffs, so Merry Christmas.
Yeah, on that note.